The 15th Infantry Brigade was tasked to destroy enemy blocking units and secure the Axis. Artillery brigades from the 14th Division began heavy bombardment of North Korea. It was the moment when the Grand Old Party and North Korea's military facilities were completely destroyed. With the command to fire, shells were launched one after another from the K9 self-propelled howitzers, and the shells flew through the sky toward Gaeseong. They targeted a heavily fortified area with North Korean Grand Old Party and military sites, and expected the concentrated artillery to help break the Gaeseong defense line. Gaeseong is already consumed by smoke and flames, becoming a cauldron of destruction with fire reaching the sky. It was visible from Paju. K9 self-propelled howitzer shells kept landing, causing explosions across the city. K9 self-propelled howitzer shells arced through the air, releasing smaller shells that rained down like light. South Korea's military fired high-explosive dual-purpose shells. Each shell holds dozens of powerful bombs, hitting multiple targets at once. One shell can eliminate everything within 50 meters. Pre-identified North Korean military facilities were devastated. Concentrated bombardment destroyed Grand Old Party and dense military installations, causing their structures to collapse. The thick smoke covering the sky was pushing Gaeseong into darkness, like a giant curtain blocking out the sun. The Air Force didn't just stand by either. The F-15K's missiles were destroying North Korean military facilities along the entire demilitarized zone. South Korea mobilized all available forces, while North Korea's military could not respond effectively. As I mentioned, because the South Korean military struck first and disabled North Korea's command system, North Korean forces couldn't respond. A leader's presence greatly impacts any organization, especially in the military. In this way, the North Korean army kept showing a one-sided defeat against South Korea. The situation in Gaeseong was more terrible than expected. The South Korean army tried to minimize civilian casualties by focusing their bombing on military facilities in Gaeseong, but civilian casualties were inevitable. On every street there were fragments fallen from the air, burning wreckage of vehicles, and twisted metal structures tangled beyond recognition from the explosions. In central Gaeseong, walls crumbled and streets were filled with burning debris and dust. People were overwhelmed by the eerie red glow, faintly visible in the darkness, and the sound of bombings echoing in their ears, unable to even move. This happened because the 1st Division used all of its artillery assets. This scene was not only observed in Gaeseong. The situation was at wartime levels after earlier events. The Republic of Korea Army had left their garrisons and everyone was in position. Fierce battles, more like one-sided bombardments, occurred along the ceasefire line. The Republic of Korea Army was putting all its strength into the fight. Various artillery units throughout the entire army were deployed and were bombarding North Korea's military facilities. They targeted densely packed North Korean outposts and military facilities, which collapsed helplessly as explosions erupted simultaneously. It was such intense bombardment everywhere that it made you think, if there is a hell, this must be it. And then, North Korea began to return fire as well. The North Korean military, like the Soviet Union and other Eastern Bloc countries, emphasizes the importance of artillery and has built its forces around artillery units. They emphasize the importance of artillery so much that they even have a separate artillery day among their public holidays. Combined, there are an estimated 10,000 to 15,000 self-propelled guns and howitzers. The main threat is the long-range artillery, including 170mm self-propelled guns and 240mm multiple rocket launchers. With secret support from China and others, and open Russian support from 2024 North Korea has improved its artillery. North Korea's military has claimed they could turn Seoul into a sea of fire from here. North Korea fired back right away, and after more military firepower, the bombardment lasted another 2 to 3 hours. That's because it takes quite a long time to fire long-range artillery. With the command system collapsed, restoring order was difficult. Thousands of long-range artillery shelled the capital area. The reason the North Korean army didn't fire at the South Korean army is simple. They hadn't yet figured out the exact location of the South Korean forces. They had also already left their garrisons. The North Korean army saw attacking civilians to cause chaos in South Korea as more beneficial than targeting the South Korean army. With over half of South Korea's population in the capital area, the impact was even worse. Despite the North Korean army's inaccurate long-range artillery, a few hundred shells hitting Seoul could still cause chaos. The North Korean army's prediction proved accurate as shelling in the capital caused civilian casualties to soar. Some citizens even died because they didn't know the locations of the shelters. There was also a risk of city gas fires. North Korean shells hitting gas stations and gas valve stations caused explosions. The ground was shaking from the shockwaves. The Seoul city government quickly shut off the entire city's gas supply to completely block the risk of fire. Screams and groans echoed everywhere from North Korean army shelling. In addition, there was significant damage throughout the Gyeonggi province area, and already the number of deaths had surpassed several hundred. Wounded by shellfire, people kept arriving at the University Hospital emergency room. 240mm rockets hit roads near the National Assembly in Uido. Besides Seoul, major cities such as Paju, Incheon, and Gimpo were also attacked by North Korean forces. Shells exploded in central Myeongdong, collapsing buildings, while blasts near Seoul Station caused buses and cars to explode one after another. The mayor of Seoul swiftly enacted disaster protocols, mobilized firefighters, aided affected areas, and evacuated citizens. Seoul's population is nearly 10 million, making a full evacuation impossible. Some areas were already in chaos. They were attacking the capital region of Korea, choosing a strategy to drag the war into a long-term conflict. While the Korean military was focused on breaking through the demilitarized zone, they seemed intent on maximizing civilian casualties to create internal chaos. The capital region, including Seoul and Incheon, was taking heavy damage. Too many people were being sacrificed in the attack that day. There was a couple who got trapped in a burning building and died while searching for each other, trying to save one another. There was also a middle-aged man who sent his child to a safe shelter and was killed by a shell while running away. It was a series of terrible situations. Many people lost their families and had to shed tears. Those tears were falling as if soaking the ground. The North Korean army's attack caused significant damage, despite some issues with their artillery firepower. First of all, the North Korean army is operating an excessively wide variety of artillery pieces. From 76 mm, 85 mm, and 100 mm guns to 122 mm, 130 mm, 152 mm, and 170 mm artilleries. There are too many different calibers and types of artillery mixed together. Because of this, the ammunition supply system becomes a mess in just one day after the war begins. Above all, the most important thing for artillerymen is ammunition management, and that was in complete chaos. A lot of the ammunition depots inside the artillery bunkers built by the North Korean army at the front lines are just stored against simple dirt walls. This causes natural moisture to accumulate inside, greatly reducing the shell's lifespan. As a result, due to poor maintenance, there have been frequent cases where shells explode inside the barrel when firing the artillery, causing North Korean soldiers to be killed. Foreign media kept reporting that war had started on the Korean peninsula. Major global news outlets made their breaking news screens resemble war rooms, reporting the Korean peninsula situation live. The words "breaking news" filled the screen in bold letters, and the subtitles below continuously reported that a full-scale war had started in Korea without any mistakes. Global stock markets were crashing. CNN, British Broadcasting Corporation, Reuters, and global broadcasters repeatedly reported the war, shocking and confusing viewers worldwide. News anchors with serious expressions were delivering the breaking news and emphasizing that gunfire from the National Army near Seoul had not ceased. Meanwhile, the roads were packed with people who were only now escaping from Seoul. The National Army tried to control the roads, but the crowds made it impossible for their equipment to move north. Smoke still rose between the buildings, and dark red blood covered the ground. Stalled vehicles lined the highway as sirens blared across Seoul. The Seoul where people used to laugh, chat, and have a light drink together was nowhere to be found anymore. Since many foreigners couldn't leave Korea, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs received non-stop calls. The calls coming from various embassies were filled with requests to ensure the safety of their citizens. Some countries sent chartered and military planes to evacuate citizens. Korea was total chaos. Meanwhile, fake news kept spreading. Rumors were spreading that North Korean shells would soon fall on Incheon Airport or Gimpo Airport, even though no fighting had broken out there yet. As a result, people ran in groups, and some even fell in the chaos. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs staff worked hard to evacuate foreigners, juggling phone calls and briefing materials to manage the situation. Fake news spreading around the world was circulating mainly through the internet and Telegram. Fake news, such as claims that North Korea used nuclear weapons or our military was defeated. False claims spread that the Korean government was deliberately blocking foreigners from leaving, turning social media into a battleground for fake news. Some United States media reported unconfirmed rumors that Korea's entire fuel infrastructure was destroyed. In Europe, pessimistic experts warned the war could spread beyond Korea and spark World War III, increasing anxiety among foreigners and residents unable to leave Korea. Foreigners in Korea rushed to leave and find flights after hearing the news, but airports were already crowded with stranded foreigners. Fake news and rumors spread fear as if they were true. The Korean military decided to break through the armistice line, leading to multiple battles as they advanced. The dawn air on the Korean peninsula was cold. I wondered if it could really be this chilly. This is Inji, South Korea. The 51st Infantry Brigade of the 12th Infantry Division prepared to breach the armistice line, their tense breathing echoing through the demilitarized zone. The armistice line before them had symbolized decades of hostility and vigilance. The 12th Infantry Division used its engineer battalion to slowly advance toward pre-identified minefields and obstacles. In 2024, North Korea started building numerous obstacles across the demilitarized zone. They destroyed roads linking South and North Korea and built barriers like anti-tank walls at the blast sites. They spent about 57 billion won on construction projects like civil engineering, protective walls, and barbed wire fences. By 2024, spending was estimated at 900 billion won weekly for the next 20 years. North Korea constructed barriers like walls and barbed wire along the 248-kilometer demilitarized zone by the military demarcation line. The long barriers stretched for hundreds of meters, so to allow our troops to advance north, all demilitarized zone obstacles had to be removed. As a result, problems started immediately. The 12th Infantry Division used K-600 obstacle-clearing tanks to break through demilitarized zone barbed wire fences, advancing gradually. The K-600 obstacle-clearing tank is a new combat engineering vehicle developed in 2020. Designed for mine clearing, it has strong anti-mine protection, so even if it hits an anti-tank mine, the main body and mine-clearing plow avoid major damage. The K-600 tank uses a mine-clearing plow to move soil and mines aside. Moving forward and scooping soil with the plow creates a 3.8-meter wide path. It also has a magnetic mine neutralizer that emits a strong magnetic field to detonate magnetically triggered mines from a distance. It also works with the mine-clearing line charge system to clear mines. That allowed us to advance slightly, but the North Korean army continued fierce resistance in many areas. When the South Korean army tried to advance, the North Korean army responded with mortars and machine guns. They were blocking the South Korean troops with intense fire. The 51st Infantry Brigade soldiers caught their breath and took cover behind Gyeonggi and the hills. The 12th Infantry Division was surprised the North Korean troops continued to resist and tried to stop them with artillery fire. Even with Air Force bombing support, there were too many obstacles and landmines. Even after using the K-600 obstacle clearing tank to make a path, landmines exploded in some areas, causing casualties. In other spots, troops were blocked by barriers and had to destroy them before moving forward. Many engineers were injured or killed. Although it wasn't described, the damage was unimaginable because rifle bullets and various shells kept targeting and attacking our troops everywhere. North Korean artillery kept up heavy fire, even destroying the K-600 obstacle clearing tank. The 12th Infantry Division was suffering heavy losses. The engineer battalion advanced slowly, clearing another fence and barbed wire in the demilitarized zone. The sounds of artillery and gunfire exploding from all directions echoed along their path. The engineers kept working, catching their breath and bending down as they continued their tasks, and they were also placing explosives on the barriers to dismantle them. Despite casualties, they had to keep advancing. This is the Republic of Korea Army Intelligence Command. The Intelligence Command was working hard to analyze information about the North Korean military based on materials sent by an anonymous informant from the United States. It was a comprehensive report on all of North Korea's nuclear facilities. These sites also had to be targeted. Currently, after Kim Yo-jong's death, North Korea has transferred the authority to launch nuclear weapons to 7 key high-ranking officials. All 7 of these officials must agree in order to launch a nuclear weapon. In other words, if even one of these 7 high-ranking officials opposes, it would make it impossible to use nuclear weapons. The Defense Intelligence Command identified all 7 officials using information from the United States. The silver lining is that some are refusing to use nuclear weapons. That's because they approached it with the logic that using nuclear weapons would lead to mutual destruction. So they started thinking about either persuading some of these 7 high-ranking officials or even just assassinating one of them. The person who was opposed was Oh Il-jong, the head of North Korea's civil defense. He was far from top leadership, but after the South Korean military bombed Pyongyang and most officials were killed, even Oh Il-jong, once distant from power, gained authority to launch nuclear weapons. However, Oh Il-jong was fiercely refusing. South Korea decided to swiftly strike the remaining nuclear facilities and eliminate these leaders. Using data from the United States, the South Korean military observed several North Korean mobile missile launchers. Since surface-to-surface warhead missiles also posed a threat to South Korea, they needed to be eliminated quickly. The Republic of Korea Air Force quickly sent F-15Ks toward North Korea's air defense and launched Taurus missiles over the East Sea, correct? The Taurus missile has a 3-meter strike error and reaches Mach 0.95. With stealth technology, North Korean radar couldn't detect it. Above all, what North Korea fears most about the Taurus missile is its strike capability. It's fitted with a dual warhead for penetrating attacks, letting it break through 6 meters of concrete and destroy its target. The Taurus missile is being considered to counter North Korea's missiles and long-range artillery hidden in cliff caves due to its capabilities. The South Korean military planned to use the Taurus missile against mobile missile launchers. The F-15K launched the Taurus missile and returned to base. Minutes later, it broke through the concrete wall and destroyed all 6 mobile missile launchers. Using government surveillance and missile assets, we eliminated North Korea's mobile missile launchers without causing any damage. The war was clearly turning in our favor. Meanwhile, Changwon produced munitions non-stop. Changwon hosts 16 companies such as Hyundai Rotem and Hanwha Aerospace, accounting for 19% of the nation's 83 designated defense industry firms. 5 system companies and several partners operated across the Changwon National Industrial Complex, boosting the local economy. The problem was that even if weapons were produced 24 hours a day, they couldn't keep up with the amount of weapons the Korean military used in a single day. That's how many missiles and shells the military was using. When the economy shifts to a wartime footing, many factories in Korea are converted into weapons factories. The military uses paper factories, car plants become tank factories, and shipyards rapidly produce warships. Any factory with even a single machine tool is transformed into a facility for making guns. This is because Korea wages wars using the principle of total war. However, even though almost all of Korea's manufacturing facilities were devoted to weapons production, they still couldn't meet 100% of the demand. That's why they needed help from abroad. At this time, Japan took the lead in producing military supplies and began to help Korea, while the Western world, including Europe and the United States, was providing Korea with a lot of weapons and military supplies. They also gave loans and supplied 155mm and 105mm shells, plus air defense weapons like Stinger missiles. Medical supplies, combat rations, and anti-tank weapons like Javelin and anti-tank, 4 were provided, boosting South Korea's military strength. Transport vehicles and spare parts were also being provided. Everything was coming through Busan Port. It was a moment when Korea's diplomatic power truly shined. Per the agreement, United States Forces Korea handled rear area defense. Bombings in the capital region shattered the peaceful sounds and echoed across the sky. Just a few hours ago, Seoul had been relatively peaceful, but now it was once again caught in the midst of war. Amid thick red smoke and black dust, people bowed, hid, and panicked. Amid the chaos, children's cries, car horns, and countless footsteps blended together. Police officers and officials waved red batons to evacuate citizens. The endless bombardment continued, and finally, the last remaining barrier was removed. The 51st Infantry Regiment soldiers likely believed they could finally escape this hell, but then it happened. The moment the Engineer Battalion commander looked up at the sky, dozens, even hundreds of drones began to break through the clouds and reveal themselves. The drones, making sharper mechanical sounds, moved in perfect unison toward the Engineer Battalion. They quickly launched suicide and shootang attacks on the Engineer Battalion in a precise assault. When the drones attacked, the Engineer Battalion immediately faltered. Drones dropped small bombs with precision on Korean troops, sometimes using incendiaries that released intense heat. The soldiers tried to respond to the threatening attack with their rifles, but they couldn't hit the drones. Explosions echoed through the mountains and fields as gunpowder smoke turned the sky red like dusk. Over 70 South Korean soldiers died in the attack. The Chinese private military company skillfully used drones, but after seeing their attack succeed, they made a mistake. The Chinese private military company member called Koreans Bangji, a slur, and ordered everyone killed. Countless drones advanced toward the Korean soldiers. That was the news story.
Thank you for watching.
See you in the next video.
See you in the next video.
In the next video.
In the video, see you in the next video.